Hello, adventurers of all shapes and sizes. My name is Chance. Welcome to my guide, and thank you so much for tuning into really the last episode of our Pathfinder 2e introduction series. That's right, you are now basically graduating grade 1 for the most part, if you want to look at it like that. Today, we're going to be taking a look at actions and stat blocks. After this episode, we're going to be getting into character creation, just so you know. But in any case, let's take a quick look at actions. So, when you're looking at actions, there's three main types, and then their corresponding five symbols, and three of the symbols are obviously connected. So, the first being single actions. You can use three single actions on your turn in an encounter in any order you see fit, which is pretty cool. If you've played 5e, this is basically your main action times trois. There are a lot more things you can do with single actions in Pathfinder 2e, and if you look at the corresponding symbols to the side, you will notice that the single action, the true single action, is kind of just the two square thing. However, two actions represents the three square, and then three action activity represents the four square. So when you're looking at most beginner action feat things, they're really only going to be the single action. Most spells are two action activities. However, there are some three action activities as you get higher up in level, so worth noting. The second type of action we're going to be talking about is your reactions. These actions can be used even when it's not your turn. You get only one reaction per encounter round, and you can use it only when its specific trigger is fulfilled, and we'll get into what a trigger is a little bit later on here. In terms of what you do need to know, reactions happen once per round, in terms of you get one once per round, and it can happen on anyone's turn so long as the trigger condition is met. And the third type of action we're going to be talking about is a free action. Free actions don't require you to spend any of your three single actions or your reaction. So it's kind of the third type. There are a couple feats and a couple class traits, I suppose you could say, that require free actions. If they have the same triggering condition, you can only use one. So if you have the ability to access two different feats that require a free action and share the same trigger, you can only pick one of them. That being said, however, if there are multiple, all with different reactions, you can actually take multiple free actions. Along that same vein of thought, it's also going to be worth noting that if a free action does not have any requirement or any trigger or anything like that, that in turn counts as a trigger. So not having a trigger is in of itself a trigger, if that makes sense. So if you have access to two free actions, and we'll get into free actions a little bit more later on, and let's say if two, neither of them have a triggering condition, you can still only use one of them on a turn, because not having a trigger is the common denominator for a trigger, if that makes sense. If it doesn't, comment down beneath, and I'm sure we'll be able to explain it to you down there. That's pretty much all there is to say about actions. It's honestly really simple. So every turn you get access to three actions and basically as many free actions as required or as your triggers permit, I suppose you could say. And then every round you get access to a reaction, which is pretty cool, pretty simple. I really like what Pathfinder 2e did with this system. Makes combat a little bit more dynamic, but in any case, let's move on here and check out the stat blocks. So the stat blocks we're looking at right now, they are aimed at actions and feats. And this is important because this is going to be what a lot of new players are looking at. If you're talking about like stat blocks, they are slightly different. If you're looking at creature stat blocks, they're actually quite a bit different, but same general format in a sense. The reason we're looking at these ones right now in the introduction is, to be honest, this is 99% of what you're going to be looking at as you're building your player. So it's really important to go over this now. Also, spellcasting is actually really interesting in 3.5, and as a direct result, it is worthy of its own separate video just for those caster classes, and I feel like it would get quite cumbersome if I were to include all those rules in this video here. Not to mention, I don't think it would render properly, but I just ran into a lot of headaches. So I kind of circled and highlighted off where the corresponding sections are. So at the top, you're going to have the action or feat name. In the case of our example, it's no escape. And then you're going to have whatever action it uses. So in the case of the true stat block template, it says it uses an action, but in terms of our example, it uses a reaction. And then the level to the far right hand side in the top corner there. And then this is of course a feat that is level 2. Very cool stuff. Underneath the name you have your traits. In the case of our example for No Escape, it is Barbarian and also a Rage-related ability, which is quite cool. And then in terms of the general stat block, usually underneath traits you'd have prerequisites. Prerequisite is any minimum ability score, feats, proficiency ranks, or other prerequisites you have before you can access this rule element are listed here. Feats also have a level prerequisite which appears above, which is we've already been over. Underneath that, you usually have the frequency, which our example doesn't have. This is the limit on how many times you can use the ability within a given time. And then underneath that, you'd have trigger, which our example does have. A trigger is reactions, and some free actions have triggers that must be met before they can be used. In the case of No Escape, the trigger is a foe within reach attempts to move away from you. So see how it kind of plays out there? And then usually underneath trigger you'd have requirements, which once again our example doesn't have. By the way, there are no examples I was able to find in the entire book that has all of these, so I kind of just picked one that had about half and then just rolled with it. That's why I picked No Escape. It was just one of the first ones I came across that checked most of the boxes. Anyways, back to requirements. Requirements, sometimes you must have a certain item or be in certain circumstances to use an ability, if so it is listed in this section. Underneath that, you'd have the main body. This section describes the effects or benefits of a rule element. If the rule is an action, it explains what the effect is or what you must roll to determine the effect. If it is a feat that modifies an existing action or grants a constant effect, the benefit is explained here. In the case of our example, you keep pace with a retreating foe, stride up to your speed following the foe and keeping it in reach throughout its movement until it stops moving or you've moved your full movement speed. You can use No Escape to burrow, climb, fly, or swim instead of stride if you have the corresponding movement type. Very cool stuff. And then traditionally underneath that main body, you'd have a special slot or special section rather. Any special qualities of the rule are explained in this section. Usually this section appears in feats. You can select more than once, explaining what happens when you do. There are actually only a couple examples of this I was able to find, and they're usually a higher level, but I didn't really go through all of them with a fine-tooth comb, so there might be one I just scrolled past and didn't really look, but for the most part, they are quite high level. In any case, that's really all you need to know for now. As we move forward and as we cover these feats on an individual level, I may change the template in terms of my video a little bit just to make it a little bit easier to digest. Although I gotta say, Pathfinder 2e did a really good job with putting this in an easy to read kind of way. Of course, I'll always walk people through it in the independent videos, just so everyone's on the same page, but for the most part, I think this video will suffice to get people up to speed. That being said, if you have any questions on any of this stuff, please drop it down beneath in the comment section, and we'll try and get to you as quick as we can here. So, in our next couple sections, we're going to be looking at the actual act of character creation, which I've been desperately looking forward to for quite some time now. So, I really do appreciate all of you who bared with me during this introduction series. Congratulations on graduating. Super sweet. Hopefully you'll like the next guide just as much as this one. I've also started to alert people on my main channel that this is happening, so expect to see a lot more activity in the comment section. That being said, I hope you'll have a great day, and as always, happy adventuring, everyone.